Good evening and welcome to this Thriving Families Seminar brought to you by St Johns Maroubra. Whether you're joining us online or whether you're here at church, we welcome you. Whether you're a teenager or someone who cares for teenagers, we welcome you, and we hope that tonight's session will prompt some really fruitful and honest conversations for you. My name is Garth. I'll be hosting tonight. I'm a regular member of the 9 a.m. service, and I'm also a teacher by day. And in that role, I know for sure the importance of the topic which we approach tonight, which is sex education in a sexualized cyber world. This is a topic which is fraught with lots of misinformation, with confusion and stereotypes and wondering who's responsible for what. And to help clear this up, we have with us tonight our guest speaker, Patricia Weerakoon. Patricia is a medical doctor from Sri Lanka. She's an academic, sexologist and writer. She's an evangelical Christian. She retired in 2012 from the University of Sydney after directing an internationally renowned graduate program in sexual health to pursue her passion, writing and speaking. Her writing and speaking brings together her enthusiasm for sex and her love for the glory of God. Her non-fiction books, which I've read many, are gold standard guides for sex of all ages, highly recommended. As a sexologist, she has translated her passion to bring good holistic sexual health to all people into practical sex education, sex research and sex therapy. She is a recognised media presence and a popular public speaker and social commentator in Australia. Patricia, are you there with us?
I am.
Wonderful. Thank you for your time this evening. You're going to share a presentation with us, after which you're going to make yourself available for questions and answers, which I think is a very brave thing. Congratulations.
I'm happy to be with you.
Thank you. To those in the audience, both at church and at home, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions. We'll have a number up later on to text the questions. So as you're listening, please be thinking of some good questions that you can ask Patricia. Patricia, I'm allowed to ask you one question to start with by way of introduction before you start your presentation. My question is this: sexologist. It's not a career choice that you normally hear of. I only know one other sexologist. Most people want to grow up and be a teacher or a plumber or a computer programmer or something like that. How did you end up in your profession?
I actually kind of drifted into it. I did my medical degree in Sri Lanka and I did my postgraduate study in Hawaii. There I was working with a professor who was at that time, we're talking 1980, one of the world's best known researchers in the area of gender. And that's the time I really recognized how wonderfully interesting the area was. But at the same time, I was worshiping in a wonderful evangelical Baptist church. And I was able to bring what I call my twin passions of God and sex together. After that, there was no looking back.
I love that. Your two passions of God and sex. Well, we're really looking forward to benefiting from your years of learning and wisdom. So I'll let you proceed with the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be with you, those of you in church and those online. So just give me a moment while I get on to share screen and we will get going. Okay, so I should be done in about 35 minutes, and after which we will have time for Q&A. I'm happy for you to ask me any questions, whether or not we actually are covering them in the talk today. So I'm happy to cover any aspect of sexology, sexuality, gender, parenting. Hey, even if you want to ask me about your married life and your sex life, I'm more than happy to answer any questions, time limited, of course. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about what does it mean to be a parent, a grandparent, a teacher, actually anyone in church. Every child in church is your child. And it's really important that we understand this. So how do we parent, whether you're a biological parent or whether you're a carer, children in this sexualized cyber world? So, firstly, who are these kids? We talk of Gen Z and Gen Alpha. Gen Z are your kind of teenagers and young adults. Your Gen Alphas are absolutely fascinating. These are the kids who were born in 2010 or after. Now, 2010 was the year that the iPad was launched, Instagram was launched, and app was the word of the year. So your Gen Alphas, so this is kids 12 and under, have grown up immersed in a cyber world. So have the Gen Zs, but more so your little ones. They will reach for the iPhone rather than a rattle or any toy. This is their world. So today, what I want to talk to you about is your kids' virtual immersion in a sexular culture. I'm using that word deliberately. You might think it's a spelling mistake, but actually it's not. Your kids are growing in a sexular culture with a very vulnerable developing brain. This is a lethal combination unless you are there to guide them. This is so important that we understand. So I want to talk about the virtual immersion, sexual culture, developing brain, and then give you some tips for the talk. Finally, I want to pick a few hot topics, gender, porn, and sexuality, and give you the science behind it and land as Christians on what has God got to say. Has the Bible got a better narrative for you and your children? So let's get started. Firstly, I said that your kids are immersed in the cyber world, a virtual world. This is just research from UK, but you can see there's a significant association with the amount of time spent on social media and anxiety and depression. This is done with teens, and there's similar research. I couldn't find quite as nice a graph for Australia, but similar research coming out for Australia. It matters how long kids spend on social media. And it is a source of anxiety. Why is this? What actually is happening? Many things, but one of the things, and I'll talk to you again about it, is the vulnerability of the developing brain. This is a very vulnerable time for your children from early childhood to about the mid-20s. And that's the time they're being bombarded with the social media. It does a couple of things. One is the culture that social media presents them with, especially girls, especially Instagram. And you can see there how the anxiety level for girls rises almost exponentially. Because on Instagram, on TikTok, they spend time following influencers and seeing what friends have up there, and the comparison of themselves and that perfect image that has to be created. And if you get lots of likes, then you're so proud. But what if you don't get those likes? Then you're sad and insecure. The influencer effect. And since almost all of these social media, and I just listed some, but almost all, and even I didn't even put video games on that list, but all of them lead to chat rooms. Chat rooms are a gateway to what we call the dark web, the underbelly. And in this underbelly are predators and pornography. And now the gender chat rooms. Your children get on the web and put in a question, maybe something even as simple as, I don't like my body, or I don't like my breast. And immediately you'll find that they're channeled into some chat room of transgender discussion. So we even have words for it. it's called social contagion, when whole groups of kids get involved in this kind of crazy social media, caught up in the social media crazes. TikTok especially sets up challenges and the peer pressure to be involved. How can you help them? Now, I can't do a lot here. We don't have the time. One of our books called Talking Sex by the Book has an appendix which gives you some guidance there. But let me just give you a few pointers. You need to help your children understand the untruths, the worldview that underlies most of the social media. The worldview that is about comparison and drawing them in to that particular site. And you need to help them understand their vulnerability, how their brains are so susceptible. And even more importantly, talk and teach them the truth about everything. And we'll be talking about this everything in a moment. Be what we call a social media mentor. Now, a mentor walks with the child. So you can't say that these things are beyond me. You can't. You have to walk with the child. You have to know what's on their phone. We call this having an open phone policy. If you're actually till they're 13, so your Gen Alphas shouldn't be on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or Snapchat under 13. But even if they are, you must know what apps they have on their phone. If they don't want to show you, then it should not be on their phone. Have an open phone policy. And very strongly now, it is recommended even for 5 and 6 year olds, never too young, to have a family, what is called technology agreement or social media agreement. Now, I want to just give you one website that is really useful here. It's easy to remember. It's the Australia site, esafety.gov.au. esafety.gov.au. Right now, I can't access chat while I'm doing it, but the moderator wants to put that on the chat or into your chat box. That would be useful. esafety, one word, .gov.au, Australian site, excellent resources. So this is the immersion, the water your kids are swimming in. You need to know what it is. You need to know the temperature of the water and what's happening. And you are the ones who can be their guide. Why? Because of this desire-driven individualistic culture your children are growing up in and you are living in too. It's a culture that tells them you have to look inward into yourself, and I look inward to my feelings and find my authentic self. And once I find my authentic self, then I need to have these desires that I have identified met. And that's the only way I can be happy and content. It's about me and my desires. So we have a culture of aggressive selfishness where sex and sexual activity has become a toy, a commodity for personal pleasure. I mean, many of you may be aware, I think it was last year or year before, when there was this whole news items on the rape culture in schools and even in universities. The normalization of sexting, sharing pictures of body parts, of pornography, which we will return to later. It has become a toy, a commodity, something that is worthless. And the very body that God's given us has become a malleable object to use according to our desires. This is the foundation of transgender ideology. And to make this really dangerous, it's so self-centered that if you don't agree with me, and if you don't not just recognize my desires, but if you do not affirm and celebrate my desires, you are evil and a bigot, and you will be cancelled. This, in a nutshell, is the culture your kids are growing up in. So they're immersed in a virtual social media that is presenting them with this message. And they are in a time from babyhood to the mid-20s where the brain is in a state of very rapid development. Two things. One is there is very rapid development, like a rewiring happening very rapidly, reforming the connections between cells and the pathways that connect. For you biologists, synapses, axonic connections. These are changing very rapidly from childhood to the mid-20s. Now, what drives this? Of course, it's biological, but, and this is really important, what goes into the brain will affect the wiring. Your brain works on especially at that time, at all ages, that's what we mean by neuroplasticity. The brain works on a use it or lose it principle. So what you put in the brain will affect the wiring. In Philippians 4:8, the Apostle Paul says, whatever is true and noble and right and pure and lovely, admirable, excellent, praiseworthy, think about these things. Every time I read that, I think, gee, he sure knew about neuroplasticity, because what you wire your brain. That's the first point. Very vulnerable brain. So what's social media putting? What's the culture putting in? What are their peer group kids in the school talking about? Gender, porn, sexuality. What are they? What's being fed in? Do you know? Have you got your finger on it? Second thing, what we call developmental dissonance. Around just reaching puberty, when the sex hormones kick in, the emotional brain erupts like a volcano. It's a quick maturation. That's when they seek independence. For those of you who've got teenage kids, or if you're a teenager listening, that's the time when you go from, mommy's little possum to just, let me go. I don't want you holding my hand. Don't you dare hug me. I want to be somebody of my own. A search for independent identity. You can see how that time, if you are not guiding them, can make them so vulnerable to the transgender ideology of their peers and of social media. Because they are vulnerable. They are searching for an identity and they want it fast. Quick rewards. The reward system is very sensitive, what we call the dopamine system. I want now system. And therefore they take risks and they want, especially when the friends are sort of geeing them on. And of course, the interest in sex. Now, this has to happen. It's part of growing up. But the problem is that the executive brain, kind of the brain up here in the frontal parietal lobes of the brain, the control brain doesn't mature till the mid-20s. So what have we got? When I speak to young people, if you're a teenager listening in, your brain is like a red Ferrari on steroids, with the accelerator to the floor, hardly any brake pedal, and no GPS. You're just shooting along. Now, parents, carers, grandparents, you are the GPS. You are the one. You are the one who can help them develop the self-control. You are the one who can guide that runaway red Ferrari. You are the one who can guide their development of identity. You are the one to whom they must be able to turn when they've done something, tried something. Of course they must. Kids must get out. They must take those risks. Part of growing up. But you must be the one who's there to help them. And so I want to and I've got that Teen Sex by the Book up there, because just want to tell you that in Teen Sex by the Book, and we're in the 3rd edition now, we talk quite in detail about this control brain and the whole neuroplasticity. So if you want more information, it's a useful book to get it from. Now, this is something I want to just very briefly talk to you and tell you that if you are interested, our book, Talking Sex by the Book, is a book that really goes into the how-to of parenting in terms of every age group, like under 5s, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, over 15, on every topic of like gender, porn, sex, every topic really. But I just want to give you this overall, what we call authoritative parenting. Authoritative parenting is a mix of best practice, really. And I have said there, it's a team activity. Authoritative parenting is a combination of dad and mom. And if you're a single parent, it's really good to have others in the church helping you in that parenting process. It's, the famous old adage, it takes a village to nurture a child, is still true, except that now we say it takes a community of church to nurture that child. Just very quickly running through, I have my 5 A's, and we talk a lot about it in detail in the book. Affection. Affection, love is spelled T-I-M-E. Time. When kids are interviewed, one of the things they say is that parents don't spend time with them. It's so important that you find the time to spend with your child and be responsive and connected. Affirmation. Be there when they're searching for identity, to point them towards a Christ-focused rather than a world-focused identity. And be the one who's always the one go-to person when they want advice. Otherwise, it will be Google, it will be TikTok, it will be Instagram, it will be Facebook, who knows, or Tumblr, or Reddit, chat rooms. If you are not the one, they will go somewhere else. So be unashamed in talking about biblical truths on sex and marriage. Don't just speak it, also model it. Model good friendship. Your kids are growing up in a world where sexuality takes center stage, and non-sexual intimate friendships are almost non-existent. Show it in your life. But having given the love and the affirmation and the advice, you are the authority figure. And have a balance of that too. Obedience to God and parents, and self-control, a fruit of the Spirit. Help them from the time they are really little to develop that self-control, and keep them accountable. Clear, consistent boundaries. Boundaries, whether it be on social media use, but boundaries expressed in grace and forgiveness. Now, I've only gone through it very, very briefly. So please, if you want more, do grab a copy of Talking Sex. It's available at Koorong, and it'll give you much more information. Happy to take questions on this later. Now, some parents are all affection and just permit kids to do what they want. That's permissive. I don't think any of you would be that. But at the other end, some of our subcontinental Asian parents can be what we call authoritarian. That is, do as I say and don't even question. Some of us grew up like that. But so you need to maintain what we call authoritative, a good mix of all of them. Again, I told it's just a very brief outline. Now, we're getting into sex now. What are the barriers to sex education? Why do some parents actually, or maybe all parents, find this so difficult to be able to do the sex education thing? Why is it? Things. The commonest is, I am too embarrassed. How do I talk to my child about, I don't know, masturbation or penis or whatever? How do I say it? I am too embarrassed. It is okay to be embarrassed. It is okay to tell your child, we need to talk about this. I'm not too comfortable, but it is important we talk. Secondly, I just don't know what to do. I don't know how or what to say. That's why we've got resources. So go find good resources. I'm not saying my books are the only, it's not a sales pitch, but we do write for you. It's published by Anglican Publications. So, find good books, find good, reliable websites. The esafety.com.gov is a really good site, but there will be good resources. So many myths. Sex communication is a green light to have sex. Wrong. All the research says that once you talk to your children, they actually take more care and they're less risk-taking, and they put off having sex. Secular research, they actually put off having sex till they're older. So talking to them as a parent, as an authority figure, is extremely important. Another myth, oh, my kids are too young. Never too young. Your kids are indoctrinated in sexuality and gender in primary school. Some stories I hear say even in kindy. And don't wait till you are asked. This is reactive. You've got to be the one who gives the start of the discussion. Why? Because you must show, yes, you're embarrassed, but that you have worked through it and that you are brave enough to have the conversation. And another one I want to briefly touch on is that parents feel afraid that if once I've taught my child this, then, other parents are going to think I'm really bad for teaching them sex. And just one quick little side story, anecdote here. I did a talk like this, and then the next time I met a parent of a very young child, primary maybe, or probably early primary. And she said that her school, the teacher called her and said, your son said in the playground that he has a penis. And this wise mother said, well, don't the other boys have penis too? And then, of course, she talked to the son and said, maybe, there's an appropriate time to be discussing your genitals. So it's okay. It is okay to teach your children the right words and the right thing. Don't be afraid that, because other parents are not doing it, it makes you somehow bad or whatever. Okay, that's the barriers. Now, some of the nitty-gritty. When should you start talking? It is never too early. There was a time when I started after retirement 10 years ago, when I would say, just before puberty, 7, 8, no. Then we said, you've got to start in mid-primary. Now we tell parents, do not send your child to primary school without having the conversation. Why? Increase of child-on-child abuse in primary schools. Primary school kids being exposed to pornography. Average age of first exposure to pornography in Australia, 10 years and dropping. And kids being indoctrinated in transgender ideology in primary schools. books being read to them that teach them that they are not what their biology. Here's what now, this was actually from a Canadian school that I read this morning on Twitter, where kids are being taught, your mommy and daddy made up, not made up, but your mommy and daddy decided to call you a girl or a boy when you were born. But only you know who you are, and you can decide who you are. It's not what your parents said you were or the doctor said you were. In other words, biology doesn't matter. You can choose who you are. Your kids are being indoctrinated in this. You need to get in before that. So, never too early. And of course, very important, start off by talking about the importance of the body and the body parts and the correct names for the body parts. Please, your sons have a penis and and scrotum. Your girls have vagina and vulva. You don't have to mention the clitoris till much later. But you must use the right words. Conversations, we already talked about it. Be proactive, but also be ready to be reactive and be aware of the conversations. A kid comes and asks you something. Ask them, where did you hear it? What do you know? And then explain it. So, where did you hear it? What do you know? And then explain. I mean, a little boy, little girl comes and asks you, what's oral sex? Or what's homosexuality? What's a lesbian? Where did you hear it? What do you know? And then explain it. So that kind of question becomes a teachable moment. And gospel opportunities. When you're reading the Bible with your kids, don't skip over the hard stories. Maybe you come across the rape stories or, some sexualized stories. Don't overlook those. Use them as gospel opportunities, especially with the pre-pubertal and the pubertal and teenagers. And it's not about one talk. Drip feed dialogue. Keep the conversation going. Television, YouTube, what are you watching? What did you watch? What are you talking about in school? Driving them to the school or sports. Use the opportunities and use the resources. Above all, role model and share your attitudes and values. So the when, the how, but now the what. I want to we can go on forever, but I want to just introduce 3 important aspects that you really have to talk about. One is identity and the body in this world of transgender ideology, dealing with pornography and sexuality. So we've done the sort of back work. Now I'm going fairly fast. Hopefully you have a PDF of these slides. Transgender ideology, and this is covered in Teen Sex, but the Birds and Bees by the book is what I really would recommend for the little ones because it has one book on understanding gender. This biological sex, this is something that you need to understand and your children need to understand. Sex is determined at conception when sperm and ovum meet. Observe, the mums here will know that during pregnancy, observed, and only confirmed at birth. Your children will be told that they've been assigned a sex. That's a fallacy. Sex is not assigned. It is determined in the uterus. That's biology. Now, how you express your gender, your sex, is called gender expression. So masculine, feminine. Now, I just want to give you one little nugget here, and that is that the transgender ideologies say that a little boy who behaves in a feminine way, those days we might have called them sissies, which is not a nice word, but a girlish boy is actually a girl. And a little girl who is a more sort of masculine in behavior, we would say tomboy, is actually a boy. That is a lie. If you have a child who is what we call gender non-conforming, it is okay. See that. So be very aware of that. Then we have sexual orientation. Are you attracted to? Who are you erotically attracted to? Now again, your kids are growing up in a culture where they are bullied, or if you like you're a boy and you're a bit feminine, oh, you're so gay. You know, it's become such a joke. And so we need to be aware of that your kids are being teased. Now, any questions you want, I do know we have to move on, so I don't want to spend a lot of time here, but I'm happy to take questions. The fourth category is this subjective, unidentifiable. Transgender ideologists called it an essence of who you are. This is kind of invisible thing of who you are. There's no science. There's nothing called a boy brain in a girl body. There's no biology that knows brain centers for identity. However, it is this unfalsifiable reality. Be very careful. This is what your children are being taught. You need to get in earlier. See, for most people, this is congruent and there's peace and harmony in life. There will always be the outliers. Happy to take questions. I need to move on. You need to point your children to an identity that is given. Now, I'm not going through all the Bible references, but you will know these. Created by God, male and female, beautifully complementary, coming together in marriage, chosen, known by God. Psalm 139, read it with your kids. The beauty of being knit in your mother's womb as male or female. There is no third sex. Biology is not a spectrum. It's male and female. Teach your children that. You can call God Father. And 1 Corinthians 6, please read this if you're a teenager listening in. So important. Your body belongs to Jesus. Your body is the home of the Holy Spirit. Honor God with your body. How are you honoring God? How are you honoring God in your use of social media? How are you honoring God in what pictures you put out there? In what pictures you send someone else? How are you honoring God in your dating behavior? Parents, grandparents, carers, how are you training your kids to honor God in their sex lives? So important for us to do this. Discuss puberty. We live in a world where the body, puberty, it's like something, a sickness that can be blocked if they don't like it. Discuss stereotypes. It goes with the earlier slide. You don't have to be that stereotypical boy, the masculine macho, or that cute pornified image of a girl. You do not have to be that. Discuss these. Now, moving on to sex. Sex is a powerful and precious gift from God. The science tells us that. Driven by testosterone, romantic love. And parents, you can think back to when you were in love. Dopamine driven through the brain. Testosterone causing desire. Dopamine falling in love. Remember, dopamine makes you dopey. Falling in love. Think back when you fell in love, parents. You were dopey. So that is strong emotions. But sexual intimacy is a binding act. Different chemicals, oxytocin, vasopressin, cause two people to form like super glue bond. You bind. Teach your children this. We talk about it even in the Birds and Bees primary school. We have to start early and talk to them how sex from creation to the creation is beautiful in that marriage of one flesh and the image of Christ and his bride, the church. Talk to them about sex being like marriage, being a trailer for eternity. Teach them how the whole Bible talks of the power. And I talk to teenagers. I talk about desire and love being like a blazing fire, like in Song of Songs. But fire is good in the right place. fire in the tinder dry bush is a bushfire. It destroys. Talk to your children. And probably the worst distortion of God's good gift is pornography. You may be saying, how would your child be exposed to porn? Everywhere. In the school bus, in the playground, even if you keep them away, even if you haven't given them any social media, even if you haven't given them an iPhone, somebody else will show it to them. So they will be exposed. How will they respond if you haven't prepared them and warned them? The brain, the developing brain it sort of gets attracted to sex. It excites the developing brain because of the emotional brain being the one that's developing fast. And kids can get really terrified, or they get sucked in. Now, I don't have the time to go through this in detail, but basically, pornography is a super sexual stimulation. I'm happy to take questions on it, but all our books cover this area in detail. What it does is it takes over those dopamine circuits and it lays down a base of pleasure so that it's just a really good feeling in the brain because it super stimulates the good circuits that God has given us. But once it keeps stimulating, it gets numb. And therefore, you need more and more and more. And the frontal control lobes actually shrink. Very quick, kids can get sucked in. The teen brain is about 5 to 6 times more sensitive to pornography. Remember, what you put in the brain will affect the wiring. And it's about 5 to 6 times more vulnerable to getting addicted. So, sorry, moving on. Okay, so is it any wonder that the Bible gives us a handle with care warning? My dear parents and carers, talk to your children. Development of self-control in a world that says, follow your heart. We need to teach them that the heart is deceptive, that we can guide them, and above all, the Bible gives us good guidance, that we have a better narrative. 3 times in Song of Songs, we read, do not arouse or awaken love till the right time. It is a powerful, powerful feeling. But what you do with your feelings is always a choice. So you flee from sexual immorality. Teach your children to not with porn, to not get sucked into the transgender ideology, to always come back to you with the question. Now, how do you do that? You start early and you talk often and you stay receptive and you open communication so that they're comfortable, so that when they have a concern, they come to you. And if you're anxious, get the resources, read it, share it with your children. The Bible tells us, flee, don't just dabble with it. Teach and model self-control. Sex education else is caught even more than taught. So you need to be aware that your children are constantly watching you. So don't take a chance. Watch your behavior. How do you relate? How do you, if you're watching this and your husband and wife, how are you responding to each other? It is okay for your children to see you kissing at the kitchen sink. They may go, oh, Mom, but it's okay. They'll remember that intimacy. It's okay if your little one's running while you're having sex. It's a teachable moment. Not at that moment, maybe. And you might want to put a lock and talk about private moments between mom and dad, but don't freak. They're not going to be traumatized for life because they saw you making love. If you explain to them that it is what mom and how mommy and daddy show each other that they love each other, it is okay. So let's pull this together so that we have lots of time. Whoops. Why am I not moving forward? Okay. Remember, in conclusion, there is no perfect parent. I parented one, and he's now 48, but I can look back and think of all the things I did wrong. You know, the Apostle Paul writing to Timothy says, Christ Jesus came into the world to save sinners. Shown mercy, he says, and Christ Jesus might display his immense patience. My dear parents, carers, grandparents, we worship a God who forgave us and showed immense patience. You are ambassadors of Christ in your children's lives. You can show that forgiveness. You can show that immense patience to your children. You can show, you can reflect the love of Christ in your children's lives. And while you're doing that, make sure you talk to them about sex and their body. It's so important that you do that. Very briefly, let me tell you a little bit about the resources we have. The book Teen Sex by the Book was the first book we wrote. It's for your teenagers plus, and it's a kind of book you give them and they throw it away and then they go when you're not watching and pick it up again and read it. And it covers all the things we talked about: pornography, gender, sexuality, dating, mating, the whole lot. And in much more detail, it's science-based and reference. So it kind of appeals to the teen brain. Growing Up by the Book is a book that we strongly recommend for the kind of pre-pubertal, because puberty ages are dropping. And it's really important that our kids know that puberty is a good thing. Because in our transgender ideology, it's like if you don't like your puberty, oh, you must be the other sex. So we can put a pause button. You cannot. You cannot pause puberty and then remove the pause button and it will all be fine. It's not. Happy to take questions. So we strongly recommend that for like puberty. But Birds and Bees by the Book is the one that I think we really need to be using on, oh, never mind if you don't use my book, but need to be talking to our primary schoolers. So 6 books, 3 starter books, Me and My Family, Me and My Body, Me and My Brain, and 3 extension, learning about sex, learning about gender, and learning about pornography. We've got them in 6 books so that you can pick what you want. Talking Sex by the Book is what we wrote last, just I think it was last year, beginning of last year. And the purpose is to give parents that confidence. Remember, are you embarrassed? Don't you know what to say? Hey, here's a book that gives you some guidance. And if you feel like you need to have a best sex for life as a couple, this best sex for life takes you from from engagement to the nursing home. I just realized Sunday is Mother's Day, so maybe this may be a good gift for Mother's Day. Just saying. And since I have so much of time on my hands, I like to do novel writing, creative writing, and those are 2 of my books, and my 3rd is being launched at the end of the year. That's my email for any of you who can't get your questions answered, or maybe you want to ask me something that you don't feel you want to talk to everybody about. That's Kamalini, my second name, and my year of birth, 1947, @gmail.com. That's my website, which links to some of the videos, my video channel, which I did during lockdown. Haven't done any recently, and my Twitter handle. Okay, so that's where I'm going to stop, and I am going to stop sharing, and we can move on to Q&A. Did they get the PDF? Did people get the PDF?
I've got a thumbs up. The PDF was sent out.
Good.
Yes. And if you didn't get it, you can contact John Batten. Hey, thank you, Patricia. That was a great research-driven and biblically based presentation. Lovely and wide-ranging, and I feel like I've been given a bit of a kick in the butt, but also given some confidence about what needs to happen next. So thank you very much on behalf of the people watching at St Johns. We do have time for questions, so thank you for making that time. If you were registered for the event, you will have received an SMS with the number to text. Can I get a nod? I heard someone's phone go off at the same time as mine. Fantastic. So you can text to that number, and those questions will all be filtered to me, and I can ask Patricia, and we've got plenty of time for it. And I already have one question in my buzzing phone. So Patricia, while people text, I'll...
Sure, let's get going.
Okay, we'll go going with this first question. Okay. Patricia, what if you feel like it's too late to have the conversation with your teens, like the ship's kind of sailed already? Any tips on how to start that?
It's never too late. Never too early, never too late. What I would recommend, just use some opportunity of coming up in the conversation. Start the opportunity. Talk about something, ask something that's happened in school. Use this discussion. We went for a parenting talk, and they talked about how lots of teens are concerned about this whole transgender ideology. Anything happening in school? Any of your friends, concerned about this? Or make it the porn talk. She said that lots of teenagers are, seeing porn and, watching porn. Any of your friends been involved with this, or you ever accidentally come across anything? So just introduce it. Use this, if you want, as a starting point. Second thing is you can give them a gift of Teen Sex by the book. And just say, hey, here's a great sex book. Let's read it together. How about you read a chapter and I read the chapter, and let's talk about sex. So, they say, oh, mom, oh, dad, but hey, you've started it, and don't give up. Keep at it. If they say no, you might get a grunt. And sometimes that's the maximum amount of conversation you get from your teenager. But that's okay. Keep at it. You might get 2 grunts the next time.
I think they're good ideas. I like the persistence. If you're here at church and you don't have your phone, we've got a roving mic as well if you want to be brave and ask the question out loud. Just signal to John Batten while John's running to people. I've got another question here, Patricia. Any tips if my children don't accept my authority? You mentioned authority earlier on in the parenting tips. How do I convince my children of a better path if they don't actually think that I have the authority to suggest that to them?
Okay. One of the things is to find someone else they trust, because sometimes parents aren't seen as the person they want to turn to. So try and find someone you can trust, who actually they will go to. It may be an aunt, an uncle, a cousin. It may be someone in church, a youth leader, or an older boy or girl, or a girl better of the same sex. Find someone else and then nurture that relationship. So nurture the relationship of other authority figures as a combination with you, so that that authority figure and you are working together. That's the best thing to do. Because, especially teenagers, parents are so not cool. So you got to find a cool person they can talk to. And that may be one of your youth leaders in church. You look pretty cool.
Our church is full of cool people, Patricia. And
There
I
you
think
are.
that's one of the benefits of belonging to a community like this is we do have access to lots of people of different ages and wisdom who we can trust. Not every family is in that position. We have a question from the floor.
Hello, Patricia. I'm just wondering what advice you would give to parents who have very, very young children declaring that they are not comfortable in the sex that they were assigned. For instance, a young child of 5 or 6 who may be a boy wanting to dress as a girl, declaring that that's how they feel and that's who they believe they are. The reason I'm asking this question is I watched a documentary a few years ago where I was very moved by parents who, out of the blue, their very young child was demanding that they're the opposite sex in which they're presenting at birth. And it was clear the parents were not encouraging this and that were struggling with it themselves. So I'm just wondering what your advice would be if you find yourself in that situation with extremely young children declaring they're not the sex of which they've been assigned.
A very young child, now the gender understanding of children is based on stereotypes. The brain of the development theory of children shows us, the research says, that till about at least 7 or 8, children will actually think that somebody wears a dress, they become a girl. If they wear boy clothes and have short hair, they become a boy. So it's stereotypes that are imprinted in a child's brain. So when a very young child says, I am not who my biological sex, most times they are thinking stereotype. Now, a little girl who says, I want to be a boy, I want to dress like a boy, I want to play with boy things, I would say be flexible with the behavior. Whereas gently keep telling the child, you are the way God made you. You are made in your body with a purpose. Your body is who you are. You are a body. Your feelings are just that, they are feelings. But your body is God's good gift to you. We have to start talking about this very early, and we have to, this indoctrination will happen from now happening in kindy to our children. So, and it's all over social media. 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds are on social media, watching the stories of children who are changing sex. We need to start early and teach children, you are your body. And yeah, you can be who you are and do what you want. So keep the stereotypes flexible, but keep encouraging kids to know that they are made the way they are made in God's image as male or female, and that biology matters. But be gentle with the behavior. I was a tomboy. When I was growing up in the tea plantations of Sri Lanka, and girls had to be the ones who did the cooking and cleaning while the boys got to have all the fun. Why would I want to be a girl? I used to sneak into my 2 brothers older than me, and steal their shorts and shirts and dress up and play dress up. And my parents said, oh, she can play dress up, but that's okay. But, you know, you can wear your brother's shorts and shirt, but come on, let's go to the kitchen and bake a cake because you're a girl. So be gentle with the behavior, but always affirm that God made them the way they are, and that's God's good plan for their life. Otherwise, you can so easily get sucked into the my body, my choice, and I will live by my feelings.
Thank you. Another question here. Early on in the slide deck, you had some research, which was a graph from the UK relating social media use with anxiety and depression. So given the link between mental health outcomes and social media, have you read any research that suggests there's cause and effect there, or is it correlation?
Yeah, it's for those who are know, it's the research coming out from Yeah, her name is Professor Jean, I can't pronounce it. It's Twenge. So it's whether it's Twenge or Twenge, I don't know. She's the one. She has done a lot of work in this area. And the other one I think is Jonathan Haidt, Haidt. And they, you know, the relationship is strong. But you can't, in this kind of thing, you can't say cause and effect. But the point is that the increase of anxiety and depression is so correlated to the use. And like Instagram landed, TikTok landed, and you can almost see kids getting more anxious. And so therefore the correlation is so strong that it almost begs a causation, although you can't say definitely.
Another question. So my 4-year-old has a good friend with 2 mums. What's your advice on talking about this? And then a follow-up question. How do you explain it when the couple also identify as Christian?
Yeah, let's do the first one. How do you describe this? We actually have that in me and my family because we went through a lot of discussion whether we should talk about it. But we decided that for this very reason, that kids in Hindi are going to have friends who have 2 moms or 2 dads. And what we say is sometimes children are brought up by two women or 2 men. But the reality is that for a child to be, you need a sperm and an egg. And therefore there has to be someone who gave that sperm who's a male and someone who gave the egg who's a female. So biologically, the child cannot have 2 mummies. Only one of them, if at all, can be the real mummy. And you know, they can understand. Even a 4-year-old can understand that. So that's the point. That's the way I would describe it. And in our book, Understanding Gender, we do give a little description about that. This picture of 2 ladies and a little child and little kid by the beach. And we explained that you needed a dad and a mom to make a baby. Now, how do you deal with that when they are Christian, when they say they are Christians? Now, that's very difficult because you have to explain that, I mean, for a 4-year-old, you can't really describe deep theology. You have to just describe that, you know, people are very different in how they believe these things. But you and I know that God made, and this is important, God made everybody. We are all made in the image of God. So just because someone is different or someone has a different family, we don't put them down or tease or bully. If at all, we love them if other people bully them. So always land on love. Land on the fact that everyone's in the image of God. God loves everybody. So you can, Jesus loved people of all types. So you can love too, even if they have 2 moms, 2 dads or whatever. Or even if they call themselves Christian or and you don't think they are, you can love them. That's, I think, where we need to land.
In your presentation, you talked about pornography being, is it dopamine that it kicks off in the brain?
Yeah. One of the chemicals, yeah.
I've heard of kind of people express an addiction to pornography. Is it an actual addiction? And if so, do you have any suggestions on ways out of that?
Yeah, it is. It's a neural addiction because it takes over the good pathways that God created and it really rewires neuroplasticity. It rewires the brain. But the wonderful thing is the brain, because it's rewired, can be rewired to healthy patterns. And so it works. When I told you about neuroplasticity of the brain, I said use it or lose it. So what you feed your brain will affect the wiring. So when you stop using pornography, I mean, I'm putting it very simply, but when you stop using it and you fill your brain with like the opposite of good intimacy. Now for that, you will need support, you will need external software, in your computers, you need people walking with you and helping you. It doesn't happen overnight. But when you do stop using and you put in other good influences, and reading the Bible is a great good influence, that combination will rewire the brain. And praise God, we worship a God who, Romans chapter 12, I believe, do not conform to the world, but be renewed. The renewal of our brain. We are promised the renewal of our brain, a new heart, the soft heart. We are promised the new body. So we can always claim that renewal. We have to, it needs repentance. It needs acceptance. You know why? Because unlike other addictions, you're addicted to alcohol or video games, somebody else will find out about it. You can be addicted to porn and keep it secret because there is the shame attached, but you can keep it a secret sin. So if you are addicted, the first thing is that repentance and sharing with people who care for you. Then you can stop the porn and rewire the brain. This is a simple way. If somebody wants more information, I have a little 2-pager I can send you. Please email me to that email. I'm happy to send it to you.
Thank you. Another question here, maybe more of a recap. So the question is, how do I talk to under 10s about sex? Maybe 3 tips.
Okay, be proactive and start the conversation. Choose something that is not threatening. And for under 10s, the best place to start is the body, because their body is changing. So talk about the body. And again, I don't want to sound like an advertisement, but if you get Growing Up by the book, we have actually pictures of body development at puberty. And so you can use those to talk about how different bodies change differently. And to talk about the body, to maybe pull out some pictures of what you look like as a teenager and share that with your kids, the body. Then talk about, so when the body, also sex, your sexuality is starting. So you will start feeling like sexual feelings and, you might, if you're talking to a boy, you might get things called erections, which is preparing you for being an adult. And you might have ejaculations, which is explain what an ejaculation is. So you can use puberty and puberty changes as a great conversation starter. And it's always good to have those. So even if you're not, don't necessarily use Growing Up, but find some resource that has pictures and, just talk to them with that. Because kids like the visual while you're talking to them. Just otherwise it becomes just talk. They want, if you can provide some visual thing and sharing, that increases the communication.
Okay. How do I limit my children's obsession with screens when I'm on screens a lot for work or entertainment? And I guess this is more pronounced with working from home.
Yeah, I know. This has been quite a question that people have asked. Very good question. The reality is, I think we go back to that, can we have some kind of a social media contract? One of the things I tell parents is, no iPhones, laptops in the bedroom. And that can be a rule for parents and children. So set rules that everybody can keep. No devices at the dining table, no devices in the bedroom, and if you are brave, no devices after 9 o'clock. All devices to be left outside on a common table at 9 p.m. and nothing taken till next morning. And no excuses. Come on, parents, you can live without your iPhone and your laptop till the next morning. If we are addicted, you see, you can't say, do as I say and not as I do. You have to get that contract and keep to it, both of you. Come on. I had one parent who said, oh, but she has to charge her phone during the night. Hello, the only plug point is in the bedroom? I mean, come on. I mean, it's dangerous because in the bedroom is where everything happens. Pornography, sexting, sending pictures, chat rooms. These things happen on an evening and they're on the phone and don't sleep. So they're sleep deprived. So get a contract. Parents and children, go to esafety.gov.au. You can download contracts for under 5, 5 to 10 by age. Discuss it. Be democratic and agree with them and keep to it. Remember, set the boundaries and observe it with grace and forgiveness, but you've got to keep to it too. No easy way out.
It actually sounds like good advice, turning your phone off at 9 o'clock. I would like to do that. So this is a good excuse. And also no one likes sleep-deprived children or parents the next day. So winning all around. How do we help a child who is struggling with same-sex attraction?
Yeah. Okay. So let me just tell you very briefly about this whole same-sex sexuality. When we talk about same-sex sexuality, we are talking about attraction, which that question said, and whether it's a child or a teen or an adult, attraction is a desire. Desires are powerful, but they're testosterone-driven feelings. What you do with the desire is always a choice. Now, we live in a world that says every desire must be consummated. So if you feel same-sex desire, you must live it out. Otherwise, you're going to be so sad and deprived. Wrong. You can feel it. And there is no gay gene. But for some people, there is a natural predisposition. Note, predisposition, not predetermination of behavior. A predisposition to that same-sex attraction or sometimes bisexual attraction. However, the choice of behavior is just that. It is always a choice. That is what you need to talk to your child about. The fact that it's okay that you feel that way. However, let's talk about how we can help you deal with these feelings. See, whether it's having same-sex sexuality or other sex sexuality, the Bible clearly says that sex is one man, one woman in marriage. But that's a good plan. So we need to talk to our children. We need to underpin it with God's good story. And if they continue to feel same-sex attraction all their life, they may never get married and they'll be celibate. But singleness is, the Apostle Paul said, it's a wonderful state of life. And so we shouldn't sort of even give our children always that they must have this man-woman marriage. They can stay single and have a wonderful life. Friendships, intimacy is important. Sexual intimacy is nice but not necessary. And these are the messages we need to make sure we give. Even as a church, we need to be sure that we don't always talk marriage, that we also honor our single people. And that's really important.
Yeah, thank you. What's your opinion, or do you have an opinion on gender reassignment?
How long do we have? The so-called affirmation therapy or gender reassignment is built on very, very unproven, untested science. It's not science, it's pseudoscience. So, very quickly, a child who says that they are the other sex, if they're allowed to live in their body, live in their skin, 85 to 90% will accept their biology by puberty. If they're socially affirmed and especially started on puberty, anti-puberty blocking drugs, 100% will go on to medicalization and surgery. Dangerous thing to start affirmation. So-called puberty blocking drugs are not, they are irreversible. The the fact that the people tell you they are reversible, you block and unblock. No, they have effects on the brain, the developing brain at teens, and bones, and cross-sex hormones are serious side effects. So yeah, God created a body good. Yes, there are a few people, and hey, 1980, I was working in a transsexual clinic in Hawaii. There were a few people, men, adult men we would see. And yeah, they would have history. So there have always been a few people for whom this disjunction between who they are, feel they are, and their biology. But it was recognized at a disjunction. Now, we have, over the last 8 years, a 3,000 to 4,000% increase of children and adolescents referred to gender clinics. There's a lot more happening there than biology. So that's a big thing, but I mean, it's a big area, needs another 1.5 hour discussion on it, the gender talk. But the reality is that it's a very, very serious thing on very shaky pseudoscience. But the small proportion of trans ideologies have unfortunately infiltrated even the medical community. But the tide is turning, and Finland, Sweden, France, UK are all now reconsidering the affirmation therapy model.
Okay, this is the last question.
Oh, gee, I was just getting into my stride.
You seem to be warming up, yeah. How do we become intelligent, generous, enthusiastic, candid, and compelling 70-year-olds just like you, 75-year-olds just like you?
Oh, wow, 75-year-old, by the way. Think a lot about sex, right? So there you are, start the conversation and keep, when you leave, don't leave today, stay and continue talking about sex. Then you start developing, and when you're 75, you'll still be talking about sex. There you are.
Good. Thanks, Patricia. We'll be sure to practice talking straight after. That does bring us almost to a close. We wanted to say thank you to our tech people who've helped put this together, and also for John Batten. And of course, thank you to Patricia for joining us. Your wisdom and your humour and your insight are much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
These are, of course, really weighty topics and serious ones. And so I'm going to pray because we need God's help. So if you'd like to join with me in prayer, that would be great. Dear God, you have made us in your image. You have given us dignity and purpose. We are both spirit and flesh. We thank you for tonight's message, that we must handle with care the bodies and brains and hearts which you've given us, that we are ambassadors of Christ in the world and in the lives of the children around us. We commit to you our young people growing up in a world so vastly different from any generation before. With their unique opportunities and challenges, we pray much wisdom upon them and upon those who seek their best. We admit that none of us are perfect and that no matter our stage of life, our sexual selves are marred by sin. We seek love and acceptance in the wrong places, or in the right places, but in the wrong way, and this does not satisfy. God, we look to you. Help us to know for sure, and then to seek with purpose, for wholeness and full acceptance, which comes not from conformity with the cyber world, but with you, God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.